Jagannath Prabhuji. And he started looking for Vaishnava scriptures. It says that to find the Bhagavatam, 8 years. He had to search for 8 years until he found a bona fide, authorized Bhagavatam copy. And also Chaitanya Charitamrita, also the same thing. And part of his contribution to our line is that he again found all these books, authorized books, many had disappeared, and so many interpretations or speculations, or watered down shastras had been common at that time. And he started preaching as it is, like Prabhupada, as it is. Not like I think, or maybe like this, or maybe not. No. This was Prabhupada's success, that he just presented things as they are, as he had heard them from his spiritual master. Yeah. Now actually, we're very, very fortunate that we have been connected to this line, this fluss. Yeah. Just like in India, when you preach in India, when you go to India, people ask you questions and you start speaking, and then mostly of the people say, yeah, I know. They have their own idea about everything. And in the beginning, the people in India were thinking that they're Westerners, they cannot understand properly. No, you have to be born in India, you have to be born in a Brahmin family or something like that to become bona fide, to authorize. That's why there was a devotee observing the deities, I don't remember which deities they were, one of the Goswami temples in Vrindavan. No? With so much devotion, he was standing there and chanting, and so much devotion. And the pujari was observing this Western devotee. No? And then he was impressed. No? But then he said, if you want to become really advanced in our line, you have to first take birth in India, in a family of devotees. And then the devotee went and told Prabhupada this. No? And Prabhupada said, yeah, you should have told him, if he wants to advance, for real advancement, he has to take birth in the West, in the family of devotees. Yes. And lately I've been thinking a lot about this saying, nobody is a prophet in his own country. And we can even see it in Prabhupada. Prabhupada preached, and people were impressed, but they didn't take him as serious as they should have taken him. And then Prabhupada came to the West, and Prabhupada mentioned that we were actually very, very fortunate. Very fortunate. Why? Because we didn't have any preconcepts or preconditions. No? Nobody of us knew actually what was Bhagavad Gita, or maybe somewhat. But when we heard Srila Prabhupada, we accepted Srila Prabhupada as it was, humbly, with respect. In the beginning, devotees used to call Prabhupada Swamiji. Yeah? That's a very common way of directing yourself to anybody who's kind of into some spiritual life in India. Yeah? Swamiji. Yeah? Just like in India, people, the Hindus will call you Swamiji also. Yeah? Swamiji. But then Prabhupada manifested himself more, devotees became more and more aware how special Srila Prabhupada was. Yeah. How special Srila Prabhupada was. When Prabhupada used to visit our temples, the whole atmosphere changed when Prabhupada came. Everyone became completely Prabhupada conscious. When we say Krishna conscious, we were actually becoming Prabhupada conscious. Prabhupada said, "Did you see what Prabhupada said? Look at Prabhupada." Yeah. And when Prabhupada didn't like something, no, this wasn't it. No, that was not important. And Prabhupada liked something, no? And devotees used to say, "Did you hear what Prabhupada said? What did Prabhupada say?" Yeah. Like for example, when Prabhupada used to go on a morning walk, every day he would go on a morning walk. In the beginning, so many devotees used to go out with Prabhupada. Of course, this was restricted later on, no? to important devotees. No, but so many devotees, and because there's so many devotees, you could hardly hear Prabhupada. No? Like Prabhupada said something, and like for example, there's a picture in Germany where we went out on a walk with Srila Prabhupada. No? And it shows that Prabhupada was smiling, and everyone also smiling. Yeah. Even though they had not understand what Prabhupada said. No? They were all laughing because the devotees close to Prabhupada were laughing. And when Prabhupada was serious, nobody dared to say a word like a... Yeah. But Prabhupada looked, and everyone looked at the same thing. Like for example, there's another photo I have in my computer where we are in Schloss Rettershof, and we're just going out on a morning walk, on a walk, no? Later on a walk with Srila Prabhupada, on the fields, because this temple was in the middle of fields. It was outside, it was not in the city. It was a big Schloss, a castle, Schloss Rettershof, close to Frankfurt. And you see everybody barefoot, barefoot. They're all going barefoot with Srila Prabhupada. Why I was there also, I remember. This was because all of a sudden Prabhupada appeared. Nobody knew he was going out. And so nobody had time to get the shoes, so we just went out barefoot with Srila Prabhupada. Yeah. Anyway, we're coming close to the end. Any more? Anything else?
Yeah, it's caught my attention because in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada is very, very heavy with impersonalists. Actually, he said that it's better be atheist than impersonalist. But in this verse that we read now in Bhagavatam, it's like we give a lot of respect also to the impersonalists that actually they are in the
Yeah,
path.
this verse especially has given a lot of attention. Yeah? Mahatma. Yeah. But let me tell you something. Prabhupada also said, when you see a sannyasi, you should give respect. Even if he's an impersonalist, you have to give respect because he's a sannyasi. Yeah. And the real impersonalists are not like any charlatan. Charlatan, same word, charlatan. But they're actually very renounced. Like these people who are representing Shankaracharya, they have still their temples, their centers in India. Yeah, and they're respected. Of course, when it comes to philosophy, Oi, oi, oi. And they are to dress in saffron. Yeah. And they're normally also shaved. Yeah. Of course, there's a great variety, no? But yeah, and they're also very strict. And they're normally very, very educated also. Very educated. Yeah, intelligent people. Yeah. But like I mentioned, but Baba also mentioned that they kind of, in the end, after all the austerities and study of the Shastra, they come to a different conclusion. This is, like I mentioned, this is last snare of Maya. And due to what? Because they still have a desire, a selfish desire. They want to become liberated. They're not ready to surrender completely. But they want to be, they want to enjoy the Brahmananda. And Prabhupada mentions that what they experience on that liberated platform is compared to a drop of the ocean. Whereas the ocean is the devotion. The taste of devotion. Whereas they just enjoying, be liberated, kind of free, unbound anymore. But like I mentioned yesterday also, during the class at the end, that there's a verse in the Bhagavatam which says that these impersonalists, when they are liberated, there's still how you say a lack, and the lack is that they are not understanding that ultimately one has to surrender to the lotus feet of the Lord. And what does this mean? This means that one occupies in devotional service, engages in devotional service to Krishna. And because of that lack, somehow or other, after some time of being liberated, they again become attracted to activities. Because it's not natural to not be active. The soul is dynamic, it's always active. Even when we sleep, we're active. Yeah? It's artificial to not do anything or renounce everything, all activity. And because of this natural tendency, they again want to do something. Yeah? And then Prabhupada said, many of these great souls, Mahatmas, like it says here, they again come to the material platform and become altruistic, like doing opening a hospital or a school or something like that for the benefit of people, because they have not learned how to engage their senses in the service of the Lord. Unless you engage your senses in the service of the Lord and trying to renounce, it's artificial. Whereas we learn from the very beginning, we learn to use our senses in the service of the Lord. Seeing, hearing, touching, sensitive, smelling, tasting. Unless you do that in devotional service, these senses and the mind, that will just carry away. It's not possible to think nothing. Nothing is something. Something is also something. También ist auch. Ja. Srila Prabhupada ki. Kunya Bihare Gopichana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopichana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Vrajachana Ranjana Yasodanandana Vrajachana Ranjana Yamuna Krida Yamuna Tira Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihare Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Bihare Gopichana Vallabha Girivardhari Yasodanandana Vrajachana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Yamuna Tira Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Bhagavad Paramahansa Gauradesh Divine Grace Bhakti Vedanta Swamada Shravupat Ki Ananda Kuti Vaishnava Vindi Ki Jai Namachar Shri Thakur Ki Jai Prem Jagasi Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasagura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyam Kunda Radha Kundi Viran Ki Jai Vrindavan Ki Jai Mathuradam Ki Jai Narvitam Ki Jai Jagannath-Puridam Ki Jai Gangamai Ki Jai Yamudamai Ki Jai Tulasi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveda Bhaktanandi Ki Jai Gaura Pravanandi. All glories to the assembly devotees, all glories to the assembly devotees, all glories to the assembly devotees, all glories to Sri Sri Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Shri Gonitai Ki. Namam Vishnupadaya Krishna Vasaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvana Pacharana Nirvishesha Sunyavari Vashata Satarine. So we continue with the Transcendental Diary, Sri Vrindavan Dham. Prabhupada laughed and finished it for me. Yes, they conclude that no more take any money. All counterfeit. At least in India, Bhagavad Gita is there, accepted, the God science literature all over the world. Every country, so why they do not take the Bhagavad Gita as the standard? He was relishing his meal, and as he chewed on a piece of pickle, it reminded him of his childhood days and his mother. My mother was very fond of pickles. After resting in the afternoon, she would take something very sour, pickle. We used to take with her also. We were small children. My mother died when I was only 14 years old. That triggered further childhood remembrances, which he willingly shared with us. He had initially gone to a school that was actually attached to his house. That means the house belonged to one of our relatives, and her stepson, he sold the whole house to a Marwari without the knowledge of this. She was in relation grandmother. So when the house was sold in those days, say about 90 years, in Mahatma Gandhi Road, most important, that Mullik's house you have seen, that was one of the Mullik's houses for 12,000 rupees, one baga of land and grand building. So it was unknown to the stepmother. The stepson sold it. Then she appealed in the High Court that I belong to a responsible family, and this my spoiled stepson has sold the house without my knowledge. Then where shall I go? The High Court considered that the drunkard son has sold at a cheap price, and she belongs to a respectable family. Where she'll go? And the High Court order was, the half of the house shall be used by this lady during her lifetime. You cannot take possession. The Marwari who purchased. So under that grandmother we used to live. Therefore this half portion of the house was a Marwari school. So it is just like our temple. And this referring to the quarters being adjacent to Krishna Balaram Mandir. So my father first admitted me in that Marwari school. So I learned this Devanagari there. For a few days I was going. I was the only Bengali student there. Because I was little, my father thought that instead of going outside the house, within the house there's a school, get him admitted. The school's name was Vishuddhana Marwari Vidyalaya, something like that. And later on that constructed huge building. The school name was Vishuddhana Marwari Vidyalaya, something like that. And later on they constructed huge building. Then the house was vacated. So in the beginning I was admitted in a Marwari school and I learned a little Hindi there. That's all. That was little chance also, understanding Hindi. And I was being 6 or 7 years old. That's all. As we talked, Bhagaji repeatedly coughed. Srila Prabhupada is also coughing quite a lot, and he had a lot of mucus, so his voice is a little thick and nasal. But Bhagaji was unusually quiet during the exchange because of some throat infection. Srila Prabhupada diagnosed the problem and had Hansaduta read out a description from the dictionary. Larynx, L-A-R-Y-N-X, cavity with enclosing muscles and mucous membranes behind and communicating with nose, mouth, and lungs. Did you understand this medical term? No. Prabhupada indicated his own throat. Here, this side, this space, some connection. When it is affected, that is called laryngitis. I know some of the medical terms. And as always, he immediately gave his philosophical overview of the problem. Shariram Yadi Mandiram. It is a temple of disease. The temple of miseries. Not only disease, there are so many other things. Matra Sparshatu Kaunteya Sitoshna Sukadukada. Bhagavad-gita 2:14. Simply giving trouble. Sharira Bandha Asana Piklishada Sadeha. Srimad Bhagavatam 5:5-4. Da lesen wir im Augenblick gerade. Das ist zwei Verse weiter. Ja. Deha means kleshada, troublesome. They do not know this science, and they do not know how to get out of this body. There's no science. This is the only science, Krishna consciousness. They do not know this science. They do not know what is a real position, how troubles come, how we are suffering. Nothing of the sort. And our Krishna conscious movement is simply dealing with this, how to get out of this entanglement of the body. That is the only problem. And the materialistic person, they do not think it has a problem. We are dealing with a real problem, and others, they do not know what is the problem, what to speak of dealing with them. Completely in ignorance, how the body is changing, why there are different forms of life, where from they are coming. They do not deal with these things. Srila Prabhupada Gate. Any questions or any comments? No? Everything clear? So Prabhupada told us a little bit about his childhood. That on the side of the house where he lived in was a school, Marwari school. Marwari. Marwari, actually, as far as I remember, the rich, the commercial people, very rich. And also Prabhupada mentioned here that there he learned Hindi. No? In India, there's many languages. I remember we went to Tirupati in the south of India. It's a big pilgrimage place where so many Hindus are coming to take darshan of the deities. They come from all over, and there's so many pilgrims coming. It's inconceivable. They have a whole system of getting them into the temple, and when they finally see the deity, they can only see at a moment. And the guard would push them on, And the whole day they were waiting to have their darshan. Anyway, so what was the point? I lost my point. Huh?
He learned Hindi.
Oh yeah, and we went there, and it's a place where you have to go up the mountain by foot. There's about, as far as I remember, like 3,000 steps you have to go up. And it's pretty steep. Yeah, and there's people, when they go up there, they're so pious, they pay obeisance to every step, because so many devotees have gone up there. So it's very respectful. Right? And when you reach up there, or when we reached up there, the temple president, Revati Raman, he sent devotees to bring us a feast. So after that, we took a big feast. And they were also present up there. They had books. They had tables with books. And the amazing thing about these book tables was so many different languages, because there were pilgrims coming from all parts of India. And they have so many languages in India. Hindi is just the language that was nationalized, so this is the official language. English, and also English and Hindi. But Jai Prabhupada was saying here that because he was born in Calcutta, so they spoke Bengali. That's a language by itself also. Actually, we have in our tradition, in our Chaitanya tradition, we have quite a few books in Bengali. Just like also the Chaitanya Charitamrita. It's also Bengali. Of course, there's so many quotes in Sanskrit Then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also. His mother language was Bengali. And then there was a prediction that there will come a time when Vaishnavas from all over the world will come to Mayapur, followers of Chaitanya, and they will all learn Bengali. Yeah. And that's already happening. There's so many devotees who speak Bengali in India. Actually, Prabhupada wanted that. Prabhupada used to always say that when tell us that when the Christian missionaries would come to India, they were all instructed to learn the local languages, so they could speak in local languages with people to preach them. Yeah. And that's what Prabhupada also expected from the devotees who were resident in India, that they learn the local language. Yeah. Any questions? Okay, then we continue with the Srimad Bhagavatam. Jayapataka Maharaj, he speaks also Bengali. He gives classes in Bengali. He gives class in Spanish, and he gives class in Bengali. Okay, we're reading from the 5th canto. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Om Naginati Vidandasya Gananjana Chakshumritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Chaitanya Manovistam Stapidam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. So we're reading the second verse of the fifth chapter of the fifth canto. Mahat Sevam Dvaram Ahur Vimuktes Tamodvaram Yoshitam Sangi Sangam Mahantaste Samachita Prashanta Imanyava Sudida Sadhavoye Mahat Sevam Dvaram Ahur Vimuktes Tamodvaram Yoshitam Sangi Sangam Mahantaste Samachita Prashanta Imanyava Surida Sadhavoye
Maham Sevam Dvaram Ahur Vimuktes Samodvaram Yashitam Sangi Sangam Mahantaste Samachita Prashantam Vimanyava Suhrida Satthoye
Mahatsevam Varam Ahur Vimuktes
Mahatsevam Dvaram Ahur Vimuktes
Tamodvaram Yoshitam Sangi Sangam
Tamodvaram Yoshitam Sangi Sangam
Mahantaste Samachita Prashantam
Mahataste Samajita Mahanta
Vimanyavak Suhridak Sangavoye
Imanyava Sudida Sadhavoye. Ladies.
Mahatsevam Dvaram Shadru Vimuktes Tamodvaram Yoshitam Sangi Sangam Mahantaste Samachita Prashanta Vimanyava Surida Sudhavoye
Mahatsevam Dvaram Ahur Vimuktes Tamodvaram Yoshitam Sangi Sangam Mahantaste Samachita Prashanta Vimanyava Suhrida Sadhavoye
Mahatsevam Dvaram Ahur Vimuktes Tamodvaram Yoshitam Sangi Sangam Mahantaste Samachita Prashanta Vimanyava Suhrida Satthoye
Imanyava Sudida Sadhavoye. Mahatsevam, service to the spiritual advanced persons, called Mahatmas. Dvaram, the way. Ahu, they say. Vimukte, of liberation. Tamadvaram, the way to the dungeon of a dark, hellish condition of life.
many of the dungeons of the dark
hellish condition of life.
Yoshitam of woman, Sangi of associates, Sangam association, Mahanta highly advanced in spiritual understanding, Te they, Samachita persons who see everyone in a spiritual identity. Prashanta, very peaceful, situated in Brahman or Bhagavan. Vimanyava, without anger. One must distribute Krishna consciousness to persons who are hostile without becoming angry at them. Surira, well-wishers of everyone. Sadhava, qualified devotees without abominable behavior. Ye, they who. Translation. One can attain the path of liberation from material bondage only by rendering service to highly advanced spiritual personalities. These personalities are impersonalists and devotees. Whether one wants to merge into the Lord's existence or wants to associate with the personality of Godhead, one should render service to the Mahatmas. For those who are not interested in such activities or associate with people fond of women and sex, the path to hell is wide open. The Mahatmas are equipoised. They do not see any difference between one living entity and another. They are very peaceful and are fully engaged in devotional service. They are devoid of anger and they work for the benefit of everyone. They do not behave in any abominable way. Such people are known as Mahatmas. Purport. The human body is like a junction. One may either take the path of liberation or the path leading to hellish condition. How one can take these paths is described herein. On the path of liberation, one associates with Mahatmas. And on the path of bondage, one associates with those attached to sense gratification and women. There are two types of Mahatmas, the impersonalist and the devotee. Although their ultimate goal is different, the process of emancipation is almost the same. Both want eternal happiness. One seeks happiness in impersonal Brahman, and the other seeks happiness in the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As described in the first verse, Brahma Sokyam. Brahman means spiritual or eternal. Both the impersonalists and the devotees seek eternal blissful life. In any case, it is advised that one become perfect. In the words of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya Lila 22:87, Asat Sangatyaga e Vaishnavachara Sri Sangi Eka Sadhu Krishna Bhaktara. To remain unattached to the modes of material nature, one should avoid association with those who are asat, materialistic. There are two kinds of materialists. One is attached to women and sense gratification, and the other is simply a non-devotee. On the positive side is association with Mahatmas, and on the negative side is the avoidance of non-devotees and women hunters. So we read the verse again. Mahatsevam dvaram ahura vimukte stamo dvaram yoshitam sangi sangam mahantaste sama chita prasanta vimanyava sudita sadhavo ye. One can attain the path of liberation from the material bondage only by rendering service to highly advanced spiritual personalities. These personalities are impersonalists and devotees. Whether one wants to merge into the Lord's existence or wants to associate with the personality of Godhead, one should render service to the Mahatmas. For those who are not interested in such activities, who associate with people fond of women and sex, the path to hell is wide open. The Mahatmas are equipoised. They do not see any difference between one living entity and another. They are very peaceful and are fully engaged in devotional service. They are devoid of anger, and they work for the benefit of everyone. They do not behave in any abominable way. Such people are known as Mahatmas. So Mahatmas. The verse refers to Mahatmas as impersonalists and persons. Then Prabhupada says in the purport, it's more or less the same. They follow the same principles and everything, but they are achieving different results. Actually, Prabhupada explained once that the Mayavadi Brahman realization is the last snare of Maya. The last snare of Maya. Die letzte Falle Mayas. They go all the way up and then in the end, instead of surrendering to Krishna, they want to become one with Krishna. They have a different concept of what is Krishna or what is God. They think it's impersonal energy. Varanta tattva vivas tattvam yat avayam prameti paramameti bhagavaniti shabhyate. This is a verse from the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam that the learned have explained that the absolute truth is realized in three different aspects: Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. And Prabhupada has given many examples to understand this concept. For example, Prabhupada said that from far away, the mountain is becoming like something undefinite. Undefinite. How do you say in English? Undefinite. Yeah. But when you come closer to the mountain, you see it has a form. There's some how you say, some structure. And then when you even come more close, you can see there's so many varieties. There's so many details there. Prabhupada gave another example. He said, from far away, the train, you see only the light. I guess in India they have lights. You see the light only. Then when it comes closer, you can see some form. And when it enters into the train station, so much happening, so many people and this and that, and so many variety, so many details. So in the same way, the supreme absolute truth is not impersonal. And the Paramatma realization of the absolute truth is only partial. Like Prabhupada explained that the realization of the impersonal is only the Sat aspect, the eternity aspect, the realization of the eternity. Then Paramatma is Sat Chit, eternity aspect and knowledge. And then the Bhagavan realization is Sat Chit Ananda. Ananda. Why? Because there's exchange, there's relation, there's exchange of relationship. There's so many details. Whereas Paramatma, worship of Paramatma, like we have heard, the yogis, they try to discover, the Paramatma within the heart. And then Prabhupada gave a very nice explanation once. He said that when the yogi actually comes to the highest position of realizing the Paramatma within the heart, first he's very respectful and very, no, I don't know, saying in English. Yeah, very respectful. But there's no service. No? But then Srila Prabhupada said, but when he becomes attracted to the beautiful form of the Lord, and he develops some affection, he starts acting on that platform. Devotional service. And this devotional service becomes more and more and more intimate. That means that yogi gets up in the end. He doesn't keep sitting there, satisfied with the realization of the Paramatma in the heart, but he actually starts being active in his loving relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And like Krishna says, Patram pushpam palam toya. No? He said, no, you can offer flower, you can offer some water, you can offer some fruit, and I will accept it. So one wants to, love is manifest in the form of service. You want to render some service to somebody you love. It's not just looking and not doing anything. But you find out what is this person actually liking, what is his liking, and what is his disliking. And then you act accordingly. You try to satisfy that person. Yeah. Just like it says in the beginning also of devotional service, is that ado shraddha. First you become attracted because there's some faith. There must be something else. There must be something more perfect in existence, like that. And then when you have this desire to find out, you start associating with devotees, sadhu sangha. Sadhu sangha. Just like it says here, sadhu sangha. You have to search out sadhus who are serious about spiritual life, seriously practicing spiritual life. Bhajanakri, then you get the seed of devotional service by surrendering to spiritual master, becoming initiated. So this is all activities. This is not, like I said, also the impersonalists, they also practice austerities. But the affection and love is never manifested, at least at this stage, because they are taught about the impersonal Brahman. Prabhupada said here, Brahman refers actually to supreme, superior, Brahman, spiritual. So anyway, so the point is that in the ultimate issue, like it says here, when you want to advance in spiritual life, the first thing is you have to have good association, sadhu sangha. Like I mentioned many times in the Nectar of Devotion, there are these, we're reading from the 64 qualities of Krishna. Every day we hear about, sometimes we continue with the same purport. But there's 64 principles, qualities of Krishna. Yeah. And there's also, what's that? So many activities in devotional service, also 64, wasn't it? I don't remember that. Yeah. And then summarizing these principles of devotional service, Rupa Goswami explains that there are 5 principles that are the most important. And these principles, the first principle is sadhu sangha, association with devotees. They have in German, they have this saying, sag mit wem du umgehst und ich sage, wer du bist. This association is very, very, very influential. Just like especially when children grow up, parents are always very careful with whom they associate. I remember my parents were very strict with this. At that time when I had a friend who it was in the same building actually where we were living, And the parents had a TV. This was something new at that time. And my parents didn't like TV, and they never wanted me to look at the TV. And I still remember one point I was at the house of my friend, we were looking TV, and my parents came, my mother came, and she took me back home because she didn't want me to look at the TV. Of course, nowadays this is becoming commonplace. Everyone is looking at the TV, and also the internet, and so much graphics and all these things. Yeah, anyway, and also I remember we were also educated in a way that we had to learn discipline also, even at home. When I was eating with my parents taught me not to keep both hands on the table and not how I say maneuver the what is that, the spoon and the gabel, what is that?
Fork.
And the fork and all that, and I was not supposed to speak nonsense also when I ate. All these things. Anyway, so it depends on what the association you have. And also whenever I brought a friend home, my parents always checked them, very carefully, with whom I was associating and all that. Yeah. Anyway, so, but then I revolutionized the whole thing and I left. I wanted to lead my own life, and that's how I actually came to Krishna consciousness. I remember when I moved into the temple, I left I already had left, but somehow, when I left home, my parents were all upset that I was leaving home. And then later on, they noticed I was when I used to visit them, I kind of this whole attitude was to go against the authorities at that time. This was the fashion at that time amongst young people. So, and I even always made sure that I was freshly shaved, and I was dressed in devotional clothes when I used to go and see my parents. And at that time it was pretty heavy. It was very, very heavy. This was not so much later after the war. Actually, there were so many people still present, older people who had been living in the Dritten Reich and all that. Even when we went out on the Harinam, sometimes somebody said, "If Hitler was still there." Yeah. Then we had a problem, and we had anyway. So the association is very important. We learn all the good things we learn in good association, and also the bad thing we learn in bad association. Just like Parvati is explaining, that there's two kinds of non-devotees. They are the impersonalists, and they are actually he mentions that materialists, atheists, who have no faith in God. As one category, and the other category is those who are very attached to sense gratification, especially to sex life. This is actually what keeps us bound up here in the material world. This attraction between the sexes, how is it in English? Geschlechter? Between the gender. This is actually what keeps us bound up to the cycle of birth and death. And that's why it's treated there's a lot of restrictions mentioned in the Shastras. If you want to be successful in your life, you want to make progress in spiritual life, there are so many rules and regulations. The whole Varnashram, the ashrams, starts with educating the children in a certain way. The brahmachari education is actually very strict. Prabhupada mentioned once that when one is young, child, he starts liking austerities, like sleeping on the floor, and doing things, accepting a lot of, risks, like kind of, anyway. So, and they learn practically to control the senses, to abstain from sense gratification. And when they grow up, after 20 years, actually we could still is in India, not so much in the cities, but outside the big cities, you can still see a lot of culture. Like for example here, when you see boys and girls, they associate freely. They go to the park and do whatever comes into their mind, whatever the senses say. But we were very surprised when we went to India the first times. You would never see boys and girls together. The boys were always separate from the girls. Anyway, so after a long education in this way, the children are allowed to get married. Actually, Prabhupada mentioned somewhere that this permission was given to them by the spiritual master, by the guru or the Brahmin. They will give the permission, and it was done very, very carefully. Not that they went to a nightclub and knew each other there or something like that. No. And we can still see this. Many traditional families, Indian families, they still follow this principle. Like for example, we have a lot of young Indian students here, and also devotees from India. And when they normally get to the age of marriage, they go to India. They go back to India. They don't, get their wife here from the street or something like that. And they go to India. When they get back to India, the parents already have a corresponding girl to get married to them. And then they come back. They normally come, the modern young people, they come back, once they have been here, they come back. Even though the parents are pushing very much, they first of all, that they earn a lot of money here, they get a good job after educating themselves, and also to maintain them, help them somehow. But basically, you will hear it from all the, sometimes our devotees are telling me this, how the parents are pushing them to come back to India. But they don't want, because when they go back to India, the things that the families has a very heavy control on them. In India, still these big families are very, very much present, at least in the higher classes. Families are very tightly, united. Anyway, so then, again, there's principles, there's strict principles. So normally when you're educated like that from the beginning of life, your whole marriage is different. You're supposed to maintain yourself, with understanding the real purpose of life. And I never, it's supposed to be, this is the whole culture around it. Family tradition and all this. And then naturally, when you have dedicated your life to a higher purpose, then at one point, like Prabhupada mentioned, many times Prabhupada mentioned that, and he also spoke to Indian gentlemen, that they should renounce. And Prabhupada says he invited them to come to Vrindavan or to Mayapur to stay there, live there. And many places where Prabhupada emphasizes that when one comes to 50 years old, then you have to renounce. You have to dedicate yourself again, absolutely, for the higher purpose in life. And in the end, at least for the higher developed persons, you're supposed to take sannyas. Yeah? I remember Harikesh wrote a book about the Varnashrama Dharma system, and he had a few very interesting quotes there. For the brahmanas, it was mentioned there that the four ashrams have to be followed. For the kshatriyas, only three, only until to one. Krishna. Vanaprastha. No, only to Vanaprastha. And there's many examples of it also. Just like in this village, I always give the example of the Pandavas. The Pandavas didn't take sannyas. They were still accompanied by Draupadi, and they started and mentioned in the Mahabharata. When they renounced, they started walking to the north, the Himalayas. And one after the other fell. Gave up the body. Anyway, so then the Vaishyas are supposed to follow the Grihastha life and education. And for the Shudras, that's only family life, Grihastha life. Anyway, so this is just on the side. But the most important thing that we hear from the verse here is the association. We should have good association. Mahatmas, Mahatma, with great souls. Srila Prabhupada explained that Mahatma is not becoming bigger, more inflated, how would you say, more volume, or something like that. But Mahatma actually means that he has become a great soul by surrendering completely to the lotus feet of the greatest soul. The more you surrender and you become humble and submissive, the more Krishna elevates you. And Krishna makes sure that the respect is there and all the facilities appear. Yeah. But basically Mahatma means, like it's mentioned here, pure devotee. Pure devotees. Completely free from selfish desires, completely surrendered to the desire of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this is only learned in the association of Mahatmas. To become a Mahatma, one has to surrender to Mahatmas, to great souls. And we're very fortunate that we have, we had the association of our founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada, who was a perfect example of this. He was a real Mahatma. Even though he was such an important personality, Prabhupada always presented himself, ultimately he always presented himself very, very humbly. Because like I have given this example, that when devotees were praising Srila Prabhupada, for example, in the Vyasa Puja ceremonies, and in the end, Prabhupada often said, all the qualities you see in me are actually due to my Guru Maharaj, to my spiritual master. Yeah. Anyway, so I'm going to stop here because maybe there's some questions or some, yeah?
Maharaj, what does it mean that the Brahmanas have 4 ashrams and the Kshatriyas 3 ashrams and so on? What does it mean?
I never asked this question. I just accepted it. I mean, this is like the stereotype Varnashrama Dharma. Yeah? But we can understand that the Brahmanas, Prabhupada used to call them first-class men, but when the Brahmana actually becoming a Vaishnava was even superior. And when you become a Vaishnava, you are occupied with devotion in devotional service 24 hours a day, then there's so many rules and regulations that fall away because you're already on the platform of devotional service. Behind all these principles, all these regulations, that you reawaken your pure love for Krishna in the heart. And Prabhupada simply used sannyas for preaching. It says as the Bhagavatam verse that in this age of Kali Yuga, you're not supposed to have children with you, with the brother of your husband. Yeah. And you're not supposed to take sannyas and there were some other things. Yeah. But when it comes to preaching or Krishna consciousness, preaching Krishna consciousness, all our acharyas took sannyas. Yeah. And Prabhupada started giving sannyas to very young devotees in the beginning. Because they were very dynamic and very enthusiastic about preaching, accepting great risks for the service or for the mission, preaching mission. We had a GBC meeting once, and Malati, she one or two female GBCs in the GBC. And we were, every year, they're presenting the candidates for sannyas. We have a sannyas minister, and he presents the candidates. And there are some candidates who are on the 3-year waiting list, or 4-year wait, or more. I don't remember if more. And every year, these cases are brought up to the GBC, and we have to comment if we know them in it. Sometimes they're cut 1 year off, and sometimes they get another year, or 2 years more, like that. And I remember Malati at one point, she said something very caught my attention. She said, we need more young sannyasis, because our sannyasis are all getting old. They're all sick all the time and all that. They cannot travel so much anymore. So we have to get some new sannyasis, some young sannyasis. And she mentioned that in the beginning our sannyasis were all young. And when we had kirtans, they jumped to the ceiling almost, inspiring everybody to, and the fire of preaching and all that. And we can see it also in the GBC. There's quite a few GBCs that are pretty old. Yeah, and come in like this. But they're contributing, they're giving very valuable contributions because of so much experience, so much realization, so much remembrance also. Yeah? Just like that. Did I answer your question? Yeah? Actually what it meant, Prabhupada explained once, is sannyas in this age doesn't refer to kshetra sannyas. Kshetra sannyas means that you retire and you stay in one place. You go to a holy place and live there. More Babaji kind of. Yeah, but for preaching, it's important. Like Keshava Maharaj, the godbrother of Srila Prabhupada, he advised Prabhupada at one point. Prabhupada mentioned it, advised him, if you want to go and preach, you have to take sannyas. So you get the facilities, you get the proper respect, they take you serious when you preach. Yeah. Krishna.
Means for the Vaishnavas are another rules, like all what we read is right, but if we want to become Vaishnavas, we have to get another priorities.
Yeah, that's what is our line, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Our line, Srila Prabhupada, Bhakti Siddhanta, Bhaktivinoda Thakur. We heard the other day that Bhaktivinoda Thakur again brought it up again to the in public, the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. When Bhakti Thakur started, For example, he was looking for Vaishnavas. He had interest in understanding, no, the teaching of Lord Chaitanya, and he was looking for, and he didn't find Vaishnavas as he was looking for them. No? And he noticed that those Vaishnavas, these great souls, they were living apart. And they avoided the association with materialistic people. They only stayed amongst themselves. Yeah? And then he was initiated by somebody, a Babaji also. And it's interesting, he was initiated, but then he took shiksha from, he's on the altar, I don't remember the name now. Krishna. No. Oh, it's a scandal, I don't remember the name. Yeah. He was a devotee or the Vaishnava, the great soul, to help Bhaktivinoda Thakur to find the place of appearance of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I remember the name. Huh?